Hey, you're back. Whoa. Hey, what's wrong? You look exhausted. Come here. Let me take your coat. Was it that bad? Oh, babe. I'm sorry. I was really hoping things would be different for you this time. Come here. I missed you so much. The place just wasn't the same without you. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. We can just stand here like this. As long as you need. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. You look like you've been through the ringer. I wish I could have been there for you. Or even better, I wish you didn't have to go through that at all. But you're home now. And I've got you. Yeah, you're home. And we're gonna make sure you feel it. Come on, let's sit down. I just lit the fireplace, so it's gonna be a while before it gets warm. Other than that, I've got everything ready for you. Your favorite blanket, some hot chocolate. Thought it might help you warm up when you get back. I didn't expect it would need to warm your heart too. There we go. I don't know what happened, and you don't have to tell me, but whatever it was, I'm here for you. You don't have to carry this alone. That's it. Just relax. You're safe here. We can stay like this all night if you want. I'm not going anywhere. I've been thinking about this moment ever since you left. Counting down the days until I can have you back in my arms. And now that you're here, I'm not letting go. Yeah, I missed you too. So much. It was lonely here without you. The holidays didn't feel right. But now they do. Because you're back. You know, it takes a lot of strength to do what you did. Going back to a place that's complicated, to say the least. It's okay to feel how you're feeling right now. You don't always have to be the strong one. I know. I know it's hard. But that's why I'm here, okay? To make sure you don't have to face any of this by yourself whatever you need, whenever you need it. I'm here. Besides, you owe me for all the nights I had to sleep without you. I mean, do you know how cold this place gets without you in bed with me? It's practically unbearable. There's that smile. I've missed that so much. And I'm gonna do whatever it takes to keep it there. You deserve to be happy, babe. You deserve to be loved and cared for every single day. And that's exactly what I'm gonna do. That's it. Just lean into me. Let it all go. We'll stay here, just the two of us, hiding from the world. No stress, no worries, just you and me. We'll make the rest of this holiday season about us. No more drama, no more expectations. Just what makes you happy. How does that sound? Good. That's what I like to hear. I've been thinking, maybe we could start some new traditions of our own. Something special just for us. Like, maybe tonight we could have a movie marathon. All your favorites. We can order in from that place you love and just forget about everything else for a while. Just you, me, and a stack of movies. Perfect. And hey, if you feel like talking later, I'm all ears. But if not, that's okay too. We can just sit here, wrapped up in each other, and let the night pass by. I love you. You know that? More than anything. And I'm not gonna let anything take that away from us. Not now, not ever. You know, I'm really proud of you. I know this wasn't easy, but you did it. And you're home with me, where you belong. Sorry if I'm being a bit mushy. I want you to know how much you mean to me. You're everything to me, and I hate seeing you hurt. You don't have to thank me. I'm just doing what anyone who loves you would do. And I do love you so much. So much. So, how about we just stay like this for a while? Oh, that? Oh, yeah. It's a new book. I picked it up the other day. It's a collection of Christmas stories. I thought it might be fun to read it together. You want me to read it to you? Of course. I'd love to. Come here, sweetheart. Get comfortable. Okay, let's see. The Joseph's Christmas. The month before Christmas was always the most exciting and mysterious time in the Joseph household. Such scheming and planning, such putting of curly heads together in corners, such counting of small boards, such hiding and smuggling of things out of sight, as went on among the little Josephs. There were a good many of them, and very few of the pennies. Hence the reason for so much contriving and consulting. From 14-year-old Molly down to 4-year-old Lenny, there were 8 small Josephs all in the little log house on the prairie. So that when each of the little Josephs wanted to give a Christmas box to each of the other little Josephs, and something to Father and Mother Joseph besides, it is no wonder that they had to cudgel their small brains for ways and means thereof. Father and Mother were always discreetly blind, and silent through December. No questions were asked, no matter what queer things were done. Many secret trips to the little store at the railway station 2 miles away were ignored, and no little Joseph was called to account because he or she looked terribly guilty when somebody suddenly came into the room. The air was simply charged with secrets. Sister Molly was the grand repository of these, and the little Josephs came to her for advice and assistance. It was Molly who for troubled small brothers and sisters such sums in division as this. How can I get a 10-cent present for Emmy and a 15-cent one for Jimmy out of 18 cents? Or how can 7 sticks of candy be divided among 8 people so that each shall have one? It was Molly who advised regarding the purchase of ribbon and crepe paper. It was Molly who put the finishing touches to most of the little gifts. In short, all through December, Molly was weighed down under an avalanche of responsibility. It speaks volumes for her sagacity and skill that she never got things mixed up, or made any such terrible mistakes as letting one of the little Josephs find out what another was going to give him. Dead secrecy was the keystone to all of the plans and confidences. During this particular December, the planning and contriving had been more difficult, and the results less satisfactory than usual. The Josephs were poor at any time, but this winter they were poorer than ever. The crops had failed in the summer, and as a consequence the family were, as Jimmy said, on short commons. But they made the brave and best of their small resources. And on Christmas Eve, every little Joseph went to bed with a clear conscience, for there was not on the corner table in the kitchen a small mountain of tiny, sometimes very tiny, gifts labelled with the names of recipients and givers, and worth their weight in gold if love and good wishes count for anything. It was beginning to snow when the small Josephs went to bed, and when the big small Josephs climbed the stairs, it was snowing thickly. Mr. and Mrs. Joseph sat down before the fire and listened to the wind howling about the house. "I'm glad I'm not driving over the prairie tonight," said Mr. Joseph. "It's quite a storm. I hope it will be fine tomorrow, for the children's sake. They've set their hearts on having a sleigh ride, and it would be too bad if they can't have it. when it's about all the Christmas they'll have this year. Mary, this is the first Christmas since we came west that we couldn't afford some little extras for them, even if it was only a box of nuts and candy. Mrs. Joseph sighed over Jimmy's worn jacket, which she was mending. Then she smiled. Never mind, John. Things will be better next Christmas, we'll hope. The children will not mind, bless their hearts. Look at all the little knickknacks they've made for each other. Last week when I was over at Taunton, Mr. Fisher had his stall all gay-fied up. And Jim says, with the Christmas presents, I did feel that I'd asked for nothing better than to go in and buy all the lovely things. I wanted, just for once, and give them to the children tomorrow morning. They've never had anything really nice for Christmas. But there, we've all got each other, in good health and spirits. And Christmas wouldn't be much without those, if we had all the presents in the world. Mr. Joseph nodded. That's so. I don't want to grumble, but I tell you, I did want to get Maggie a real live doll, as she calls it. She never has had anything but homemade dolls, and that small heart of hers is set on a real one. There was one at the Fisher store today, a big beauty with real hair, and eyes that opened and shut. Just fancy Maggie's face if she saw such a Christmas box as that tomorrow morning. Don't let's fancy it, laughed Mrs. Joseph. It is only aggravating. Talking of candy reminds me that I made a big plate full of taffy for the children today. It's all the Christmassy I could give them. I'll get it out and put it on the table, along with the children's presents. That can't be someone at the door. It is, though, said Mr. Joseph as he strode to the door and flung it open. 2 snowed-up figures were standing on the porch. As they stepped in, the Josephs recognized them as Mr. Ralston, a wealthy merchant in the small town 15 miles away. Late hour for callers, isn't it? Said Mr. Ralston. The fact is, our horse is about given out, and the storm is so bad that we can't proceed. This is my wife, and we're on our way to spend Christmas with my brother's family at Lindsay. Can you take us in for the night, Mr. Joseph? Certainly, and welcome, exclaimed Mr. Joseph heartily. If you don't mind a shakedown by the fire for the night. My Mrs. Ralston, as his wife helped her off with her things. But you are snowed up. I'll see to putting your horse away, Mr. Ralston. This way, if you please. When the 2 men came stamping into the house again, Mrs. Ralston and Mrs. Joseph were sitting at the fire, the former with a steaming hot cup of tea in her hand. Mr. Ralston put the big basket he was carrying down on a bench in the corner. Thought I'd better bring our Christmas flummery in, he said. You see, Mrs. Joseph, my brother has a big family, so we are taking them a lot of Santa Claus stuff. Mrs. Ralston packed this basket, and goodness knows what she put into it. But she half cleaned out my store. The eyes of even the Lindsay youngsters will dance tomorrow. That is, if we ever get there. Mrs. Joseph gave a little sigh in spite of herself, and looked wistfully at the heap of gifts on the corner table. How meagre and small they did look. To be sure, beside that bulgy basket, with its cover suggestively tied down. Mrs. Ralston looked too. Santa Claus seems to have visited you already, she said with a smile. The Josephs laughed. Our Santa Claus is somewhat out of pocket this year, said Mr. Joseph frankly. Those are the little things that small folks here have made for each other. They've been a month at it, and I'm always kind of relieved when Christmas is over and there are no more mysterious doings. We're in such cramped quarters here that you can't really move without stepping on somebody's secret. A shakedown was spread in the kitchen for the unexpected guests, and presently the Ralstons found themselves alone. Mrs. Ralston went over to the Christmas table and looked at the gifts half tenderly, half pityingly. They're not much like the contents of our basket, are they? She said, as she touched the calendar Jimmy had made for Molly out of cardboard and autumn leaves and grasses. Just what I was thinking, returned her husband. And I was thinking of something else too. I have a notion that I'd like to see some of the things in our basket right here on this table. I'd like to see them all, said Mrs. Ralston promptly. Let's just leave them here, Edward. Roger's family will have plenty of presents without them, and for that matter, we can send them ours when we get back home. Just as you say, agreed Mr. Ralston. I like the idea of giving the small folk of this household a rousing good Christmas for once. They're poor, I know, and I dare say pretty well pinched this year, like most of the farmers hereabout after the crop failure. Mr. Ralston untied the cover of the big basket, and then the two of them, moving as stealthily as if engaged in a burglary, transferred the contents to the table. Mr. Ralston got out a small pencil and a notebook, and by the dint of comparing the names attached to the gifts on the table, they managed to divide theirs up pretty evenly among the little Josephs. When all was done, Mr. Ralston said, "Now I'm going to spread that tablecloth carelessly over the table. We'll be going before daylight, probably, and in the hurry of getting off, I hope that Mr. and Mrs. Joseph will not notice the difference until we're gone." It fell out as Mrs. Ralston had planned. The dawn broke fine, and clear over the vast white world. Mr. and Mrs. Joseph were early astir. Breakfast for the storm-stayed travellers was cooked and eaten by lamplight. Then the horse and sleigh were brought to the door, and Mr. and Mrs. Ralston carried out the empty basket. "I expect the trail will be heavy," he said, "but I guess we'll get to Lindsay in time for dinner. Anyway, much obliged for your kindness, Mr. Joseph. When you and Mrs. Joseph come to town, we shall hope to have the chance to return it. Goodbye, and a Merry Christmas to you all." When Mrs. Joseph went back to the kitchen, her eyes fell on the heaped-up table. "Why?" she said, and snatched off the cover. One look she gave, and then this funny little mother began to cry. But they were happy tears. Mr. Joseph too, and looked and whistled. There really seemed to be everything on the table that the hearts of their children could desire. 3 pairs of skates, a fur cap, a collar, a dainty work basket, a half-dozen gleaming new books, a writing desk, a roll of stuff that looked like a new dress, a pair of fur-topped kid gloves just Molly's size, and a china cup and saucer. All these were to be seen at first glance, and in one corner of the table was a big box filled with candies and nuts and raisins, and in the other a doll with curling golden hair and brown eyes, dressed in real clothes, and with her wardrobe all in a trunk beside her. Pinned to her dress was a leaf from Mr. Ralston's notebook, with Maggie's name written on it. Well, this Christmas, with a vengeance, said Mr. Joseph. The children will go wild with delight, said his wife happily. They pretty nearly did when they all came scrambling down the stairs a little later. Such a Christmas had never been known in the Joseph household before. Maggie clasped her doll with shining eyes. Molly looked at the work basket her housewifely little heart had always longed for. Studious Jimmy beamed over the books, and Ted and Hal whooped with delight over the skates. And as for the big box of good things, why, everybody appreciated that. That Christmas was one to date from in that family. I'm glad to be able to say, too, that even in the heyday of their delight and surprise over their wonderful presents, the little Josephs did not forget to appreciate the gifts they had prepared for each other. Molly thought her calendar was just too pretty for anything, and Jimmy was sure the new red mittens which Maggie had knitted for him with her own chubby wee fingers were the very nicest, gayest mittens a boy had ever worn. Mrs. Joseph's taffy was eaten too. Not a scrap of it was left. As Ted said loyally, it was just as good as the candy in the box, and had more chew to it besides. Looks like someone's getting sleepy. You ended up falling asleep, huh? I guess we're gonna have to watch those movies and order food tomorrow, sleepyhead. But that's okay. You've had a long day, and you deserve to rest. I guess that's my cue to join you in dreamland. I'm glad you're home, my love. See you tomorrow.